Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Jenelle Riley with Variety. Before we're joined by today's guests, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation today is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given nearly $7 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. So if you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and you need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce actors Nicolas Cage and Alex Wolff of Pig. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
This is an audience of your fellow SAG-AFTRA actors. So I actually always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card? What was the job that brought that magical card to you? And I'll start with Alex because he looks like he remembers.
I'm laughing at the question. I don't know if I do remember. I mean, I started when I was very young, so maybe this is a bad time to admit I don't have my SAG card still. I don't remember. I think I got it when I was very young, but I don't remember what it was.
You're still very young, I would like to point out.
When did you get it, Nick?
Well, I did something on television, but I think this Screen Actors is obviously different than that. So I would say I had a very small part in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and that qualified me for
You're in the bleachers, and they're football
yeah,
games.
yeah,
Like that.
I got cut out. It wasn't a good part. I was supposed to play the Judge Reinhold part, but because of my age, they couldn't cast me in that. But that was a horrible experience, and I'm not going to mention names, but there were a lot of bullies on that set, and they got me to change my name to Cage. And I don't need to mention names because I'm sure you can connect the dots, but there were a lot of bullies that couldn't stop pestering me about being Coppola. So I switched over to Cage, and that was the start of it. So it was an important film for a lot of reasons: SAG card and Cage name. And I just want to clarify something. I didn't legally change my name. My name change happened on Valley Girl, but it was on Fast Times that I knew I was going to have to change my name.
Wow, that's when you switched over.
Yeah.
No idea. Well, Pig marks the feature directorial debut of Michael Sarnowski, and I'm probably going to keep saying that because it is such an accomplished and beautiful film. I really can't believe it's his first movie. For each of you, how did the script find its way to you, and what interested you in the project?
Well, I think it went to Alex first.
Oh, really?
No, I think you were attached when I got it. I think they just I think I'd been like in their lookbook or something, but they definitely needed a heavy hitter before they got me involved.
I thought on one of those roundtables we did, they brought up they had already had you cast in their mind's eye, Vanessa and Michael. But the script came to me via my agency. They were really the sort of engine behind bringing it to me, and they knew I wanted to do something that was dramatic, something that was smaller and dramatic, and that I had wanted to return to a more nuanced and quiet style of film performance. And they brought me this script, which I flipped out for immediately when I read it. And then I had a great conversation with Michael in person. We had lunch together, and it just flowed, and nothing about it seemed forced or strained. And that's exactly how the production went. It just flowed. It was very easy to make Pig. And then they told me they were casting Alex, and I had just gotten off of seeing Hereditary, and he completely blew my mind in that performance. And then we met at, I think it was the Toronto Film Festival, and he said really nice things. And I looked at him and I just said, I know who you are, meaning you're as good as it gets. You're probably the best actor of your generation. And I was just so galvanized to get on a set with him, and I knew he would bring out the best in me, and he did, because he's a jazz actor of film performance. He knows how to riff, he knows how to improvise, he knows how to find the notes within the scene itself. As we're playing it, you can do anything, and he'll back you up and then bring something to it that you can then riff on. And it's not a surprise to me that his father is one of the best jazz musicians around, Michael. And I think it's that kind of ability is in his bones. So
I'm getting verklempt. Well, I'm sure it's not a surprise to anyone that the reason I signed on to this movie was because of Nick, and Nick is obviously the actor of his generation, and he was, for me, one of the main reasons I even got into acting all was because I saw someone who was doing something that was completely original, completely unique, completely honest, and he had a level of truth and personal risk in his artistry that I didn't know was possible until I'd seen his performances. And he was someone where I would rush to the theater to see him in whatever the movie was. So I thought, I mean, are you kidding? If there's an opportunity for me to do craft services on a set for a Nick Cage set, I'll do the movie. So I signed on before I even read the script, and then I read the script and happened to be great. But that was secondary to me getting to work with someone who I considered my genius, my personal icon, my guiding lighthouse in a very fickle, unforgiving business where it's very hard to figure out what the hell you're doing, to not just flounder. And when I watch Nick, it makes me grounded and feel like, oh, what we're doing matters, and I feel like this performance is no exception, where when you watch him in this movie, you go, oh, this is connecting with a sort of deeper sentiment about life than just a great performance. It's getting to something spiritual and otherworldly, and that's Nick for you. He to me is. It almost goes beyond Marlon Brando or one of these. He's like a Beatle or something. He's like it's magic. He's a magic person, and so I honestly feel like I mean, we could just go all day, but for me, it's like I feel like I learned how to be from Nick. Like I feel like I was always maybe doing acting, and I do some good takes and some bad takes. But since I've worked with Nick, I have changed my style of that. If I'm not just completely being, and I'm not just completely listening to the other person, to me, it's not worth it. So he's changed my whole life. And even aside from that, he's become one of my best friends on the planet. And it's a short life, and we don't get that many people that understand you. And you think there's going to be a lot more people who get you than you have. And Nick, day one, just felt like this person understands me, and I feel so seen by him. And I never want these things to end, because I feel like it's such a great opportunity for us to publicly express this beautiful thing that we've created. And I love him, and I love his performance in this movie, and I'll get up at any hour to promote it, because I believe he deserves an Oscar for it. I believe he deserves every bit of recognition that you could get for this movie, because I think it's as good as it gets. So that's
I think Alex and I are kindred spirits, and we both go into this path in cinema as students, and we're both always going to be students, and we're always going to be asking questions and asking each other questions and getting inspiration from those that are younger than us, and continue to ask for opinions. And that is to have that attitude of the searcher and the seeker, looking and never stopping, and always being interested, is something I see in Alex. And I think that's why we connected, and continue to connect. And it's like the line in the script, we don't get a lot of things to really care about. Well, we don't. Yeah. And so, I have very few friends, and the friends I have, I can count on a couple of fingers. And so it's important to me that Alex is in my life, not only as a great actor, but as a friend.
From everything I'm hearing, I want to see you guys work together again. I don't know if we can do a Pig 2 or if there's something else that you're working
I would.
Well-
I just want to
well-
point out that I think it's possible.
But the thing that you need to know, that you probably do know, but that why I put Alex on such a high level in my mind is because he's what Jerry Lewis would call the total filmmaker. And there aren't a lot of them. And Jerry was somebody who was my friend, and he was someone that would say, if you really want to be a filmmaker, you got to write it, you got to direct it, you got to star in it, you got to produce it, and if possible, you got to write the music for it. And that was Jerry, and that was Charlie Chaplin, and that's Alex, and that's Jim Cummings. He's another.
Love Jim.
Oh my God. I mean,
We love Jim.
Alex and Jim are my two favorites because Jim is the total filmmaker. And both Alex and Jim, you get them on any set with another actor, they're going to be bringing a whole other set of skills that I want to have, but I don't, and I want to.
Not true. If you've seen Sunny, you know that Nick is
Exactly.
absolutely the total.
Well, I mean but he's starred in his own movie, and having just played that one little part of Acid Yellow and Sunny, that was the most intense day in my entire 43 years of doing this. I don't know how he does it. To have to star in your own movie and direct yourself, to me, is monumental. And Jim and Alex do it all the time.
Well, I actually teased Jim about starring in his own movies because he couldn't get anyone else to do those humiliating things he does to himself.
You know what's amazing about him, though, is
Giving that speech.
I don't mind talking about, Jim and Alex, because they're both handsome dudes, and yet they're not afraid to look completely horrific and do these like wild and absurd gesticulations and expressions. They're not afraid to get ugly on camera, and that's the other thing that I admire about both of them. They will bare their souls and embarrass themselves in the name of finding something with a little bit of integrity, and that is always to be applauded.
I mean, but who do you think they got that from?
He got it, obviously. It's funny because we're both just always imitating Nick, and I feel like you can see it in that. But I love that movie, Jim's movie. And
Beta Test?
So good.
Oh, no, that's great. No, the one he directed.
Thunder Road?
The Beta Test,
Correct.
too. Directed Thunder Road and the Beta Test. But if you check out the Beta Test, I couldn't help but look at it and go, wait a minute, that reminds me a little of Peter Lowe in Vampire's Kiss.
Wait, really? I
Yeah,
have to see Beta Test. I didn't know he directed that.
It's so
he's
good.
He's playing an agent in it, and it's just marvelous how great he is in that movie. You'll love it. You'll love it, Alex.
At the funeral in Thunder Road when he is going.
Oh,
I was thinking like this is some of my favorite acting routines. He starts doing the dance. I was like, this guy.
No, but you go there. You're not afraid to go places like.
What should we do, the three of us? Because I think on this call we should plan.
Yes.
Adam Moon, you got into some serious stuff, especially the scene where you started fighting everybody in the hotel room. I mean, that was intense. That was really intense, Alex.
And I got my jaw broken in that scene.
Oh my God, you
not
really?
surprised.
Yeah, I did. It was totally my fault. The fighting is really hard, and I always get this panic that it's not going to look real, and I'm trying to be really careful if I'm doing the punching, but if someone else is doing the punching, it's very hard for me not to really want to not look like I'm being an actor about it. So I end up always getting punched. And there's a scene when I'm getting my ass kicked in the bathroom. This is my movie, The Cat in the Moon. Skylar Gisondo dislocated both sides of my jaw, and I didn't want to make him feel bad. So I'm directing the day with like my jaw. I'm like, hey man, and he's like, what's wrong with your jaw? I'm like, you dislocated it. I'm gonna pop it back in, don't worry. And so I had to direct the day with my jaw like that. It was pretty funny.
Oh my God.
But see, something I've been thinking a lot about, just hopscotching with this interview and conversation, is that it's really become clear to me after over 4 decades of doing this, that Hollywood is a small town that is overpopulated with fair weather friends. And that's why it's so meaningful and so, what my wife would call ichiban, most important, that I can have these friendships with Alex, or like I'm starting to form a nice friendship with Simon Rex. And, like with my fellow actors, or Fred Heckner from Butcher's Crossing. I mean, because you need your friends, and we need to be able to bounce ideas off each other, and we don't. And then Alex brought up this, like, the fickle aspect, and it does happen, and so that's why I want to make that change, and I want to stay friends with the people I work with. There's no need for competition. There's no need for jealousy. It's like, let's support each other and let's celebrate each other and be happy for each other, and let's keep talking. I think that's the change that has to happen in Hollywood. And that's why actors have to stay. We're all each other's brothers and sisters. We all have to throw down in front of the camera and bare our souls and fall on our faces and deal with, criticism and what have you. Let's us be friends and stay close. And that's what we're doing. And that's why I really cherish Alex's friendship.
That's so great. I'm actually really curious. How did the two of you go about preparing for your roles? I mean, is Rob's world or Amir's world a person you could instantly relate to? Did you have to take on special research for these parts?
Well, my own life was the research. I had gotten to a place in my own life, and I was looking for a character where my life experience could be applicable, but also the folks that I know in my own life, whose names I won't mention, who've been through tragedy. And I think of them and what I saw them go through, and all that stuff sort of informed Rob.
Alex, for you?
Yeah, this was an interesting thing where, I think Amir represented a part of myself that was very unglamorous, but was very true to me. Unfortunately, I didn't want to relate to Amir in the way that I did, and I think his he reminded me a little, like, there's elements of Happy from Death of a Salesman, or things like, I found that he just wanted to succeed so badly, but you saw that the root of that was that he really needed his dad's love and his dad's approval. And so I think that the research is kind of a quiet, ephemeral process where there's no exact guidelines on how you can prepare for something. I read a lot about Beethoven because I found out he loves classical music, Amir, and then I found that actually he was very similar to Beethoven in a lot of ways, of this kind of young, hungry, angry chip on his shoulder. He's kind of swarthy. He's kind of short-tempered, and all these things so then I read a bunch of Beethoven biographies. That was one, and I kind of got enraptured with that. And then I just did a huge deep dive into truffles and finding out the history of truffles and finding out why they're like The Sopranos, why it's so bloody, and why it's like the gold rush, but even more weird. And you can't, they arise in a very weird, it's almost magical the way truffles arise. So I think that was, the more I got into that mystery and the more I read about it, it felt like I started to understand why he's so hungry and why he's so desperate. As these truffles, they have a 5-day lifespan. So I think it was a very good metaphor for why Amir is always rushing and trying to get places and do his best, is because he literally is fighting to get the freshest, best truffle that dies in 5 days. So I think that was part of the process, is just going as deep into the Beethoven hole as possible, and then find everything out about the truffles. And then you just kind of show up and you have the greatest listener and the greatest big orb of emotion. And when you're staring at him, it's very hard not to feel a lot of things that you either have to bring up or you have to try and sit on. Both equally interesting, I think.
It's such a fascinating world. I knew obviously nothing about it, even though it's set in Portland, Oregon, right near where I grew up. Salem, Oregon, which is,
right. That's not Salem, which.
No, but it is for some reason the capital, even though Portland should be. So, and I always joke, if I had grown up in Portland, I probably wouldn't have left, because it's wonderful. But how much does that help with preparing for your roles, being on location, helping to immerse you in that world?
It's an enormous contribution to finding the character. I always use this Latin term, genus loci, which means the genie of the place. And I'm always interested in being invited to make movies in very exotic places, because I do believe each place has its own genie, and that genie inspires the performance, inspires the work. Portland, and where you're from, Oregon, there's such a, it's probably some of the most beautiful countryside in our nation, and there's such a magic to the quality of the air and the way the wind hits the trees and the crispness of it, and then the water, the ocean, the attitude of the people. All of that informs performance. All of that, as I like to use the word thespian, as pretentious as that sounds, because I feel like actor implies lying in some way, but as thespians, we absorb all that. And whether we know it or not, it's informing the performance. It's informing the way we say the dialogue.
Sorry, Alex just got suddenly smarter. I don't know what happened.
I put on my glasses.
Yeah. I was like, almost didn't recognize you for a second. Actually, that leads to my next question, which was, Nicolas, I wanted to ask about the physical transformation you took on for Rob. How specific was his look described in the script, and how much was that a discussion with you and Michael?
He was described in the script as being a kind of a mammoth of a man, like really a presence that was quite enormous and somewhat intimidating, somewhat menacing, although the character itself is quite gentle and never rises to or degenerates to a level of physical violence. He's actually just on a path to get his beloved pig back, and he is not going to resort to violence or anything like a John Wick kind of storyline. But the appearance was to be of someone who was kind of massive and formidable looking. And I think that was a nice counterpoint. So Michael and I put a lot of thought into, where we're going to apply the blood after he's been savagely beaten in a fight club. And in fact, we would go to restaurants with the makeup on, and it was interesting because nobody reacted to it, which was quite peculiar. And so therefore we didn't make any adjustments in the script about people commenting about Rob's appearance. We put a lot of thought into the kinds of clothes. This is a man who was living in isolation in the woods, and he probably didn't have a lot of changes. He didn't need to present himself to anyone. So it was just one outfit, one bit of wardrobe, which I always liked that. And I learned that from watching James Dean and Rebel Without a Cause. That red jacket, that was his like emblem. And I think once you find a bit of wardrobe for a character, it's good to stick with it, because then the audience begins to identify with the character, with what they're wearing, and that becomes like almost like an emblem of the character of Rob, in this case.
The film has this amazing cast, but I want to talk about your primary co-star, which is the pig itself. What was it like working with her? She seems like a really good, I think it was a her, right?
He was, yeah, Brandy. Well, my primary co-star is Alex, but Brandy was a pig. They couldn't get a trained pig. They didn't have it in the budget to get a pig that had any idea of working on camera, let alone with actors. Brandy was very motivated by food, and we made sure she was happy and she got what she needed, the carrots or whatever it was she was into that day. But she didn't want to be bothered with it, with our world of making movies. It wasn't, she just, she wanted to get paid, and I understand, give her carrots. I mean, sadly, Brandy is no longer with us, but the silver lining to that story is that she had piglets. Mm-hmm. And so the piglets live on for her. So that's nice.
The piglets are the total filmmakers.
Yeah. Boy, they were the total filmmakers. I'd love to see their movies. My God.
Dave.
Alex, for you, you talked about how important Amir's relationship with his father is. What was it like sharing scenes with Alan Arkin?
Adam Arkin. And
I do that every time. And then I called Alan Adam, and
Well,
Adam Allen.
Well, they do resemble one another. And
Listen, they're father and son.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, Adam's used to that. Adam, so it's very weird because Adam did play with my mom years ago when I was just a piglet. When I was 6 or 7, he played my mom's husband
Wow.
so I knew him as a kid, and I think it was just by chance that he was hired to play my dad, but it was very interesting. And it was amazing. He's the best. We only got to work together for a few days, but I think it's scene stealing performance. It's a really it's a terrific, incredibly nuanced performance that made that character that maybe could have been mustache twirling into something really solid and something with a real point of view. And I loved it. I had a blast with him, and it's just crazy that he also worked with my mom years ago.
I did know it was Adam Arkin. I completely misspoke, but I know he's a very busy director. And so I don't get to see him act as much as he used to. And so it's such a pleasure to see him on screen. And I love your scenes together.
Me too.
So for each of you, what ended up being the most challenging scene or moment? I feel like we can get into spoiler territory if you want to, because first of all, I think everyone's seen the movie, but also they can always pause us and go back and watch it. But was there a day that was particularly challenging for you, or just like a scene that maybe you spent more time on?
I think that for me, because I mean it when I say that everything just flowed, and especially when I was working with Alex and with Adam. And those days, I didn't have to put a lot of thought into it. It just came out, and I had faith that it would come out in the right way for all of us working together. But the one scene I would say was a little bit of a head scratcher for both Alex and myself was that Fight Club scene. I couldn't fully comprehend what Michael was doing with it and where we were going with it, and I kind of just went along for the ride. But he clearly had it in his mind's eye what he wanted to do with it. But for acting in that world was just, that was the one time that I felt like I was a bit uprooted, wasn't entirely sure where I was. And I think by design, maybe that's why that happened, because the scene itself is so surreal and bizarre and uprooting within the context of the movie itself. Do you agree with that, Alex? Wasn't that a bit of a head scratcher?
That's it. You took the words out of my mouth. That was the only day. And but it's funny because it's probably my favorite. It's one of my favorite sections of the movie, is watching Amir take that in. And it kind of makes perfect sense, where it makes me feel like, why didn't I totally get what was going on? But it was just, it was fun though. I really like not knowing really where you are sometimes. It's kind of my favorite. It kind of keeps you alive. It's like on stage, if you're doing a play, it's really easy for things to really dry up. And then if you forget a line for even 10 seconds, it feels everything it's like the whole, you're right there. And suddenly, everybody where they're sitting and the couch is right there. And there's a bead of sweat coming down the other actors. And you're just like, and it felt like that a little bit, like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And it kind of woke me up and got me back in, because it's very easy to get into too smooth a rhythm when you're, and it's important to shake it up and have a scene that doesn't work, or you have to just not do as well. It's very important for me to do a scene a week where I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Because it kind of, I don't know, shakes things up.
And Michael really understood his pacing. He really was very precious about the speed at which both Alex and I would walk or talk. I mean, he really had a very clear concept of the pace of the movie, so much so that the scene where Alex and I are walking to that scene, that Fight Club scene, we had to do it many times because he was just trying to get us in the close together. Maybe Alex was walking too fast, slow it down, or speed it up, or I was walking too fast. And remember that, Alex, how specific he was with that?
And also, like, I'm a New Yorker. I'm used to walking behind people and being like, get out of the way. But he was like, just really slow. I'm not used to walking so slow. I was like, I feel ridiculous. And yet it's this beautiful shot in the movie where he kind of trailing, and I didn't get it.
Yeah, but he was interested in a movie called Revenge. Wasn't
I
that?
love that movie?
Yeah,
Revenge.
and he was always about slow, slow. Michael really wanted both of us just slow it down. That was the one note that we got a lot of, was slow, slow.
Which is probably particularly hard for Amir because he is in such a fast-paced
Yeah. It was
lifestyle.
often confusing, but I thought that the balance that we got was just so great, and again taught me a lesson that I don't know anything, and that if I don't understand something, it's usually going to be something that is good. If I don't always have to be in control or understand everything. I think that's a weird misconception we have as actors, that we have to understand everything, and if we just don't, it's not our job.
You must put so much trust in a director, though, because you don't know how it's going to turn out. And I'm assuming sometimes you can see a movie and it's like, well, that's not what I thought I signed up for. But then also sometimes you're probably pleasantly surprised, I would hope.
Well, absolutely, and that's where it becomes very exciting, because sometimes you think it's not working, and then it is in a really magical way, and sometimes you think it's working like gangbusters, and it's crap, and it just keeps it very interesting. But I think I've arrived at a point where I know that my job, or one of my jobs, or the main criteria of my job, is to fit within the director's vision. Mm-hmm. That I have to facilitate the filmmaker, the director's, his or her vision. That is my job. And I have to bring what I know I can do and do best to that vision. And sometimes I have to call them and explain myself why I see it this way, because I think it will help your vision. So if you have the mindset that my job is to facilitate the director's vision, then I'm happy when it works for that person. Then that means I've done my job. It may not be the movie I wanted to make, but it is the movie they wanted to make.
Before we go, because we do have so many actors watching this, and you both have, it can be a very challenging business, and you've both done so well for a long period of time. I'm going to guess neither of you auditioned for your roles in this.
It was very rare for me. Very rare.
Really?
I auditioned a lot. I audition for most things and have to do the callbacks if I get the opportunity. And I'm never discriminated against auditioning. I think a lot of people need to see you do a lot of things. For me, at least, I think I'm just young and I haven't done enough work. But this was this really lucky, special thing where it was just offered to me, and that's just one in a million. So I really took it in and tried to enjoy the flavor, because you just got to audition a lot, and that's you got to get good at that too. And I think it's a really good. It's like, I don't know. It's like, professional athletes go to practice, and that, I think that's what it's akin to.
And you're also auditioning the people you're working with.
Well, what I was going to say was that auditions in themselves, when I was doing it a lot, we didn't have the advantage of videotaping it and sending it in, which I've been told is now the norm. But when I was doing it, you would go in the room, the casting agent would be looking at his or her nails while you were pouring your heart out. And it became clear to me that if you're really doing something great, and this is for all the actors that are watching, the chances are they're not going to get it, because if it is truly great, then it's going to be unlike anything they've seen before, and they may not understand, because they're trying to find the next Ryan Gosling, the next Keanu Reeves. They don't want something brand new or unique. So my counsel was always put a video camera on it and frame it. Things look better when they're in a frame. Like you put a Van Gogh in a frame and wow, I'm sure we would love a Van Gogh without a frame. But if you look at something with the frame on it, that enhances the performance. So that's why I would always say, put it yourself on videotape. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in.
No, that's great. We love practical advice. Do you actually remember the last time you auditioned for anything?
I remember I was in Jerry Bruckheimer's office for a movie called Thief of Hearts. With Stephen Bauer got the part. I loved that script. Douglas Day Stewart wrote it. I wanted it. It was so romantic. And I was in Jerry's office, and I was on a couch, and I was doing the scene, and apparently I punched the wall and I put my fist through the wall, and Jerry never fixed the wall. Like the plaster that broke off, he kept it. He said, I still have the hole in my office. But that was, I think that was the last time I auditioned for anything. It was a long time ago. I don't like auditioning. I think Alex is an advocate because he's a filmmaker in his own right and probably needs folks to audition for him as well. But I mean, I just find it so demeaning and humiliating. I feel for all those actors out there watching. I know what it's like, you know, to have the doors.
It's horrible. I mean,
and all you can do,
horrible.
but all you can do is don't give up. You can't be great unless you know you're great. So go out there and be great. And if they don't get it, that's on them. You're still great.
It's fantastic. Well, again, I want to thank you both so much for being here. Congratulations on Pig. It is such a special film. And thank you so much for talking today to your fellow actors.
Sure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.